Hello there, welcome to the live stream. Can everybody hear me fine? If not, let me know. Hey Marcelo, hoor je mij of hoor je mij niet? Can everybody hear me? Or is it too silent? Just let me know. I think everybody should be fine. Just checking. Okido. Merci Thomas, merci Marcelo. Nog 2 minuutjes wachten en dan gaan we eraan beginnen. Welkom, welkom everybody. Tralala. En alles goed met iedereen? So depending on the people watching, I will be doing it in Dutch or in English. At the moment we've got 2 people speaking Dutch online, so I'm just gonna wait and see who might be up. I see 6 people on Facebook. On YouTube I have 2, so depending on, yeah. So if you are there, let me know from where you are. So, welcome to the live stream. We've changed some things up since the previous one, so we've built an entire set here in the studio. We should be live and running. So if you see me looking to the right side, everything is on my right side, and I got a big screen up there to monitor all the chat and stuff. So if you got questions, feel free to get in touch. I'm just testing. We are up and running, and if everybody can hear me perfectly fine, we are ready to go. So if everybody has tuned in, just a quick reminder, I will be retouching with a Wacom tablet. This time it will be a small one, not a big one. On my other desk here in the studio over there, I have a big one, which is the size of an A3. For me, I don't need it that big. Just a small size like this is perfectly fine, since I've got 3 screens attached to it. I limit myself to like this little segment to retouch in. So I'm gonna change the screen, and Marcelo, this is the Rode Procaster. Yeah, that's it, Rode Procaster with the little windshield on top of it. Um, Really nice mic because it gives that nice depth in your voice, which is pretty nice. So let's just change over my screen up to Capture One. So I will be doing the raw conversions in Capture One, so give me a sec to change it up. So here we go. You should see my screen now combined with myself somewhere in an angle somewhere. So this will be one of the images I'll be retouching live today. This will be one, and then it's just a matter of what people want. I've got some different shots selected. So this one is provided by Nele. She's a Belgian model photographer. So she sent me those images. This one is from a model on Instagram. She sent me that one. So this one is taken with a mobile phone, so it's a JPEG. Nothing too crazy. So let's first start on this image. The first things we can notice is that the image is a little bit dark. So what we're gonna do is go to this tab from exposure and put a little bit more contrast, a little bit more exposure in the image, at least the stop. And then once that's done, I'm gonna reduce the contrast a bit, because we want to start from an image with almost no contrast in it, because the more contrast or sharpness we have in the image, the more difficult we make it ourselves to retouch skin and all those good stuff. So just keep in mind that when we are retouching, you want to start from a base image which is as flat as possible, because when there's contrast in the image, all the skin issues will be emphasized, and that's something we want to avoid. So back to the screen. So this one is shot at f13 ISO 100, and that's about it. So what I'm gonna do is put a little bit more detail in the shadow part, and now I'm gonna export this to Photoshop. Just keep in mind that when I'm exporting this, I will be exporting this as a 16-bit file and the resolution of 300 pixels per inch. So I'm gonna export this into Photoshop. Yes, I want to start the batch. I can see people joining in on Facebook. So where are you from? Where are you watching from? Because if the majority is Dutch speaking, I will probably change it up to, yeah, Dutch. So Photoshop. Now, first things first, let me change back to the screen. So first things first, my screen looks totally different than a normal Photoshop version, because when you open it up, it won't look anything like the screen I have. So keeping that in mind, the reason I've done this is that I don't have to move from my right side a lot to the left side. So I want to keep everything stuck together on the right side, so I don't have to move a lot going left, right, and lose time by just choosing the tools. Now, I use a lot of shortcuts. If I remember them, I will tell them. If I don't remember them, just keep an eye on the tools bar on this side when you see me changing the tools. So first things first, what do we need to change? We need to extend the backdrop. We might also need to like put her a little bit more centered. So extend it like that. So that's one thing I'm gonna do first. And then we're gonna duplicate this layer by hitting Ctrl Command J. I'm gonna make a selection with the rectangular marquee tool. I'm gonna make a selection from this part. And one trick this is also something you can use when you want to extend the backdrop. So let's say you have paper hanging down and you got the tripods on the left and the right from the frame. This way, if you make a selection, make sure you don't put any stuff in it. So it has to be an even backdrop. So what I'm gonna do is go to edit, content aware scale, and just by holding down the shift key, this is an important thing, hold down the shift key. If you don't hold it, you will see that it starts stretching scale wise. So it will scale up and it will scale to the sides. If you hold down the shift key, you just drag it out. So what this does, it calculates some sort of algorithm, mathematic algorithm, which just extends the backdrop to the side. So we're gonna deselect it. And there's a little bit of a gradient down here. So what I'm gonna do now is take a brush, the keyboard shortcut B, and I'm gonna take a soft brush. So the flow at about 3%. And what I'm gonna do is just sample, so holding down Alt, and then just like paint softly over it. Because it's an even background, there's not a lot of issue. Also, you can see here that there's some sort of hotspot from the light. We want to make it as even as possible. So sample, take this color, paint it a bit. It takes a bit of time. There we go. So one of the things we want to do is like make the background as evenly as possible. Also, the negative space on top of the head we don't need. So by holding down the shift key, I'm gonna resize it a bit. There we go. Because that's all stuff we don't need on top. And then the next step will be some skin retouching. Now, if you see me doing this, it's just by holding down the Control and spacebar while clicking and just zooming in. So what I'm gonna do now is take the healing brush. You can tell that my healing brush is not the normal round size. It's more of an oval shape. So why is it an oval shape? The healing brush works that it calculates the texture in it and next to it. Now, when you have an oval, it makes the areas, it takes the sample from smaller, so you will have less smudges and the texture will be kept all fine just to retouch it. Now, that's something personal. You don't have to do this. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Even a little bit more. There we go. And then we're just gonna drag. Now, for me, I've changed my Wacom tablet and it goes way too quick now. So I have to be really careful what I do. If you got questions, feel free to let them know in the chat. There we go. Zoom out again, hitting Ctrl-0. And then when we have done this step, one of the next steps we could do is use a frequency separation. Now, I've explained it in the previous tutorials how it's done. So what I'm gonna do is just run action. Let's see where it is. So we've got that one, and then we got one here. I think this would be the 16-bit. So I'm gonna go for 4.6. And then I'm gonna say done. So this one is from Flurn. Go check them out, flurn.com. They provide really nice and free tutorials if you want to learn more about Photoshop. So we've got now a layer which has all the color on it, and we have a layer which has all the texture in it. So we have split both of them. And what we're gonna do now is try to blend all the colors together, but with keeping the texture on top of it. So we can just paint freely on the face. So what I'm gonna do is take a brush sample and then just like with a low flow. That's really important. Don't do it with like a lot, because then it will look funky. And this is a weird shadow, so I'm gonna try to take it with me in the blending. Now one thing I cannot forget is to like make it a little bit darker when I will be taking it down. So that's one step. Now don't forget the arms. Not a big brush, small brush. And the more you sample, the more you will respect the skin tones you have in the image. So that's about it. I'm not sure if I want to remove this bright spot on this side, so let's see what it says when we remove it. There we go. So let's see what we have done so far. So just a little bit of change in the in the textures. There we go. And now the next step will probably be the retouching, meaning the coloring and the toning. So I'm gonna first do some dodging and burning. Dodge and burn. It's just two curves, which are, one is going up, so this will be the dodge. One is going down, so this will be the burn. And with a brush, I'm gonna paint over some highlights, which I like to emphasize. So this one, and then some in the face. If you see the build up too quickly, just make sure that you take, now I've done it with a flow of 3%, make sure that you do it with a flow of 1%. Now we can also lower the opacity of the layer if it's too much, so I'm gonna lower it a bit. And then we're gonna move on to colors. So in regards of colors, we got curves we can use. So first things first, what do we want to do? We want to introduce some contrast in the image. So I'm gonna drag the black point to the right. I'm just gonna use the mouse. So I'm gonna drag this one to the right, and I'm gonna drag the highlights a little bit to the left. Then we take another curves adjustment layer and we just drag it like that. Now, when we introduce contrast, we have to keep in mind that we make the image more saturated. If we want to prevent that from happening, one of the things we can do is change the blend mode from normal to luminosity. This way it doesn't mess up the contrast that much. It respects the colors without making it too saturated. So let's see. I'm just gonna take all these things and drag them to the top. These two were dodge and burn, dB. This was frequency separation. This was the cleanup stage. Now, normally I don't name all my layers with something like this unless it's a really big retouch. And these are the contrast ones. And now if we go to selective color, so selective color is one of those nice things you can use. So it splits everything up in all colors. So the RGB, the CMYK, and then we have the highlights, midtones, and shadows. So we've got the highlights, we've got the midtones, and we've got the shadows. So whites are the highlights, neutrals are the midtones, and the blacks are the shadows. And all the other colors, well, we know on the left side we got CMY, so cyan, magenta, yellow. And on the right side, it doesn't state it, but we got RGB, so red, green, blue. So if we drag it to the left, we introduce more red. If we drag it to the right, we introduce more blue, cyan. So Control Command Z is our best friend. And what I'm gonna do now is just make sure that the skin we have has a little bit more punch to it. So I'm gonna drag like this. I want to have it a little bit more brighter, and I want a little bit more yellow in the skin. Then I do this, I call this one red. And then I do the same, but this time I target a different, like this time I do the yellows. I want the yellows to be a little bit more yellow, a little bit darker, and more red in them. Purple, I'm not sure. So green, purple. Purple it can have, or as they say, magenta. Um, so yeah, and then I'm gonna make everything brighter again. No, not with exposure, with another curse. And I'm gonna drag everything up. Not too much. And then when this is done, one of the things you can do is add even a camera raw filter, so ACR filter on top of it. So one trick to do this is we merge everything together by hitting Ctrl Shift Alt E, or on the Mac it would be Command Alt Shift E. And then we go to filter and we hit camera raw filter. Nothing too crazy, I think. And then in here we have a lot of presets. These ones are ones from my own pack. I'm just gonna see if there's something in there I like. They are all way too colorful, so what we're gonna do is adjust them a bit. So like that, make it a little bit more pinkish. And I don't like the contrast in it, so what I'm gonna do is remove the contrast. There we go. And then the dehaze can also go, but add a little bit more vibrance into it. And in the HSL adjustments, we can play with each color, change them hue, lightness, and saturation. So, for instance, if I drag it to the left, I will make my reds more pinkish. If I drag it to the right, I will make my reds more orange. Keeping that in mind, red, orange, and yellow are the colors we mostly have in the skin tones. So that's something to keep in mind. So I'm gonna move it back the way it was. Saturation, it's a bit much, the red. This one's nice. Let's see. Yeah, this one looks nice. And then the luminance, do we want the red to be brighter? Do we want the red to be darker? I think I want to go for a little bit brighter, like that. And I'm gonna hit just OK. It applies the camera raw filter. And now what I'm gonna do is make an extra selective color and then target the shadows specifically. So what I want to do is put a little bit more blue in the shadows and a little bit more magenta. There we go. So, and if we compare it with the previous one and the retouched one, now one thing to keep in mind, like the details in the hair, they are totally gone. So it will just be one. If you would print this image, the detail in the hair should have a little bit recovery going on, because this is way. Why is it shifting? There it goes, it hangs. No, don't crash. Don't crash. I have no idea. And this is typically something that happens when we're doing a live stream. So what I'm gonna do now is save the image. And when it is done, I'm gonna reopen the Photoshop, because for some reason it has this issue already since 2 updates. So you start moving around and then it just freezes. It doesn't do anything anymore. I can still put layers on and off, but visually my screen doesn't change, even though all the other things works just fine. So what I'm gonna do is just wait until it's saved, close Photoshop, restart Photoshop, and then we just start it all over again. So boom, 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 boom. So that's the first one, that's done. I'm gonna tag it with 5. If it's done, I'm gonna close it down. Just gonna wait a bit. So are there, as far as this goes, any questions? Let me check on social media if we have some questions. I don't see any questions and I don't see my camera moving anymore, so I suppose I'm also frozen with the camera. So I want to save it out and let's just see if I can fix that camera issue. And we're back, I think. Yeah, we're back to moving. So, any questions so far? If not, it's all good. No questions, not possible. Do we want to save? Yes, again, yes. So just give me a sec while it's rebooting. And am I moving now or am I still frozen? I think I might be moving again. Not sure. Yeah, I'm moving again. Hey. Saving 99, close it down. Let's hope it does the job now. Why? 99, 99. It just keeps hanging on 99. This is what happens when you do a live stream. This morning also I was setting up everything and then for some weird reason the computer started doing crazy stuff. The screens didn't work, nothing worked, so it was weird. So let's open up Photoshop again. It's loading. This one can go. No questions. That's just not possible. So here it is again. Reading it. So I was mentioning the texture we have lost in the skin, in the hair. So this is something that happened already here in this stage. So let's see which stage it happened. Probably, yeah, probably here. Because we drag down the blacks to the right side, we drag down all the blacks. And that way this part is totally lost. Now what we could do if we want to is go into duplicate this layer, go into image adjustments, shadows and highlights, and we could recover an amount of the shadows. But as you can see, you get that sort of decontrasted look, and that's something we don't want. But it's something to keep in mind that when you're doing this with colors, the more extreme you go with colors, the quicker the shadows will run through, will run totally blown out. So I'm gonna cancel this one out. I'm gonna open this one up. So that's about it for this one. Now, a final step which you could do is like do some liquify. Let's see what we can do. Drag it like that. Lower the brush or make it smaller. There we go. And done. There we go. And that's it. So I'm gonna save this one out. Now, when I save stuff out, one of the things I do is I merge everything together. So again, by hitting Ctrl Shift Alt E, then I duplicate this layer to a new document. I'm gonna resize this image with the longest side at 2048, so 2048. Just hit OK. I put my brush on it. So for instance, let's say I want to do it like that. I just put it on there and then my image is done. Since it's not my image, I won't be doing that. And then if you want to sharpen, you can duplicate it. You can desaturate the image, adjustments, desaturate. And you can change the blend modes. Anyone in here will work. So let's do linear light for now, which is the most heavy in regards of sharpening. And then we go to filter, other, high pass. And in here we put an amount so that we sharpen it up. So let's see, before, after, let's do it like that. Let's zoom in a bit so you can tell the difference. I'm not sure if you on the stream can see it, but there's really a difference when we talk about sharpening. Now, this one is done on the entire image. We don't want to have this on the entire image. We just want it on separate parts. So let's say you want to sharpen for the eyes. You want to sharpen separately for the clothes. You want to sharpen separately for the background. If there was a background, you can do that in each step. So you can redo the process again and again. So you, as long as you keep sharpening, you can put a layer mask on top of it and then just yeah, do it again. So let me show you. We can do soft light. We add a layer mask on top of it. I'm gonna do filter, other high pass, let's say 10, which is way too extreme. And then with a normal brush, I can like paint on the areas I want to really sharpen. So if I switch it on and off, now 10 was a bit of a high radius, but yeah, that's the way we sharpen things. And now we just do Control Alt Shift S or file export, say for web, and make sure that the quality is set at 100%. So this one is 1.9 megabytes, which is fine. Social media should be able to use it. And then we do save, and then that's that. I'm gonna cancel this one out. I'm gonna save this one, and then if there are no questions about this one, I'm gonna change over to another image. This one I'm already gonna resize immediately in Capture One. So what I'm gonna do now is, why is it doing that? No, let's see. The crop has been messed up, so I'm gonna do just the normal original one, and then when we resize it, there we go. So in regards of light, this image is perfectly lit, so there's no need to do something in here. So what I'm gonna do now is just export it straight into Photoshop. Let's see if there are some questions so far. No questions. So this image, I'm gonna duplicate it again. Nope, not on that screen, on this screen. So I'm gonna duplicate the image, use the healing brush, zoom in a bit, and then we're just gonna clean up some skin issues. Now you could use this one. Let me quickly change back to my screen, there we go. So you could change to the quick retouching brush, which works fine for these kind of images, because yeah, there's not a lot of initial texture on there, so we don't need that much texture. Now if we go over here, why is it doing that? So I'm just using the cloning stamp to make everything blend a bit more with a flow of 10%. So you don't want to start doing this with 100% opacity and flow, because that way it gets weird really quickly. And this is what happens when you just install a tablet. You get that weird looking circle. So for next time, that's something I have to check for sure, because it bugs the hell out of me. Look, like I'm not doing anything. There we go. Now we've got the hairband going on here. I'm not gonna remove that because there's not enough detail on the picture to recreate. Pascal, it should still be 1020, 1080, I think. It might be that the Facebook doesn't like the the streaming in 1080 because the camera you see me on is streamed with the 1080, and for some reason Facebook doesn't like it really much. Can you try on YouTube? So if you go to my YouTube channel, let check out if the quality is better. I think it will be better over there. I think it's just Facebook limiting the stream quality. So when we go back to Photoshop, so we just cleaned it up a little bit, and this image doesn't need that much because it's yeah, not a complex image to retouch. So what I'm gonna do now is drag it a bit to the right, bring in some more lights, and then if we go to curves, we can, for instance, create contrast with using just curves. So if I drag this one down, drag this one up, it gives that more of a split toning kind of vibe in the image. Now I want the shadows to be a little bit more bluish, not too much. And then one of the tricks you can use is put a solid color on there. Hey Carlo, alles goed met Carlo? And then I'm gonna change this blending mode to, for instance, screen. Double click on it, and then I'm gonna split it. And I'm gonna tell it to only be visible where the highlights are visible. So something like that. And then I'm gonna lower down the fill because this is way too much. But this way you give the shadows and the highlights some sort of tinting. Now in this case we're talking about only the highlights. You can do the same with, for instance, a color you want to have in the shadows. Let's say I want this darker one. I double click on it, and then I just drag it to the left. And then you can see that all the shadows get covered with the red. Now the transition is not so nice if you use Blendif, unless you hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and just drag them out. Now I don't like the reddish. You can see there's some weird stuff going on this way. So if I drag it more to the right, but I'm not into the whole red kind of things. Yeah, I was thinking so, Pascal, because probably Facebook, because a lot of people are streaming these days. You have to do something. I think they limit it to 720, and when you upload it, or when you finish the live stream, I think they have the possibility to resample it to 1080, but I don't think they do it. I just think it's like yeah, it's Facebook. So you see, you can play around with this. You can create some interesting looks. I'm not into the whole toning of the shadows this way, but you can. This one can also be lowered in opacity a bit. And then again, I'm gonna put some contrast on there. There we go. And that would be it for this image. So nothing too crazy. It's just a little bit of a change. So clean it up a bit. Put some contrast in it, some colors, and that's it. So you see, it doesn't need that much time when you're retouching it. It just takes some time because, yeah. Let's see. Nobody on Facebook that needs me, or at least doesn't have any questions. So let's jump back to capture one. So now I need your, do we retouch this image, or do we take this one, or do we take this one? It will be the last one I will be doing for today. So which one would you prefer? Let me just go by the names. Let me change back to the Streamlab on the, there we go. So I need to know now, do we retouch this one, which is an image from Svenja? Do we do a beauty shot from Jana? Or do we do the shot outside? So let me know. I need at least somebody telling me which one you prefer. If I don't get any reply, I will probably be doing I think this one, or yeah, I'm just gonna wait and see what people want. So Svenja, Jana, or Nele. Let me know. Dus, ik zal het even in het Nederlands doen. Willen jullie de foto nu zien van Svenja, die ik bewerk, de foto van Jenna of de foto van Nele in de varens? Carlo zegt in the green. We got two voices for the green. Two people for the green. Any other takers who want to see this one? Let me know. Ja, Carlo, Nele zullen we doen, denk ik. So we will be doing this one. So let me just change a bit because I have some flare going on behind me. So first things first, let's just crop it. So I don't want to lose anything from the dress. This part can go for a little bit. So I'm just gonna drag it down, something like that. Not too much, because if we take the consideration that the rule of thirds, we want the face to be around this little point, and then she goes diagonally through the image. What I'm gonna try is see if I can rotate her a bit. Something like that. Yeah, perfect. Now, I don't know if you have used the layers stuff in Capture One. It is the same as using adjustment layers in Lightroom. The only difference, it works a little bit different. So I want a new layer, and for this layer, what I want to do is take a layer with a gradient going from shadows. So I want to make this part a little bit brighter. So what I'm gonna do now is I've made a new layer, and I'm gonna take the gradient. So by hitting the G, or just clicking there, and what I'm gonna do is drag this one out a bit, like so. Then I'm gonna go to the exposure tab, and I'm just gonna drag this one up a bit. This way should be perfect. And I'm gonna lift the shadows up a tiny bit. So perfect. This is already really important to do this step in the raw processing, because here we have all the details. A raw image is not more than just a computer mathematical sequence of zeros and ones. So you have more manipulation possible in a raw file than instead of a normal file. Now, just keep in mind that when we want to do something now, that we're still doing it on the layer we have here. So if we want to do the entire image, we select background, and we're gonna lift up the shadows a tiny bit, the blacks a tiny bit. The whites, I don't think they are blown out. Let's just check. Exposure warning. We got a little dot, so that's not really something to worry about. You can drag the highlights down a bit. And then, as mentioned before, we're gonna export this one in a PSD file, 16-bit, 300 pixels per inch. So I'm gonna hit process. And then we're gonna wait a bit. And there we have it. First things first, I'm gonna close this image. I'm gonna save this image and close it down. De lijst van de deelnemers staat over de schuivers die je gebruikt. Carlo, die snap ik niet. De lijst van de deelnemers staat over de schuivers die je gebruikt. Ah, oké. I think I... Ja. Ik denk dat ik... Wacht. Je bedoelt dat de chat over de dingen staat hier. En over waarschijnlijk ook de just Capture One. Even terug dan. Oké. Even de chat afzetten. Normaal zou die moeten verdwijnen, maar blijkbaar doet hij dat niet. Dus... Chatbox even afzetten. Zo. Normaal is die nu weg. So let's do this again, since I've missed some people because there was the chat on top of it. So let's just redo it. So what I've done now is I've created a layer, an adjustment layer, with just pushing down the plus key. And then I've used the gradient and just dragged it from the upper right down. And then I went to the exposure tab and I've dragged the exposure to the right. So to give it a little bit of a difference. Okay. You can see the difference here if I hold down the Alt key. So that's the only thing I have done here. And on top of that, I've put a little bit of, so I went back. I selected only the background. And on the background, I've just put in a little bit more shadows, shadow details, a little bit blacks, and then I reduced a bit of the highlights because in the arm here, there was a bright spot. So that's everything I've done here. And then I went over to this part and I exported it again as 16-bit Photoshop file. So that's the step I've done. Then I've came into Photoshop. I'm gonna switch the chat back on. Just give me a sec. There we go. I'm gonna refresh it. Then everything is gone. And then the first things first, we do it as we do in every image. First, I'm gonna clean up the entire scene. So one of the things I can already tell that's bugging me is this little branch. Okay. And what I'm gonna do is just go over it. Voila. Nobody will notice. This is just cleaning up the image. Thomas Horbar, hello Gunter, did you have changed the quality? Okay, it's apparently the same that's coming in again. So when I turn the image, how can you turn the image? You can turn the image by holding down the keyboard shortcut R from rotate, or here you have the rotate tool, which you can then just drag. If you got stuck in this and you don't know how to go back to the way it looked, just hit escape and it will reset the view you have. Now, because retouching like this is a bit funky, I'm gonna change it up so it's easier for me to see what I'm doing. So I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller, and then I'm gonna zoom in a bit. I'm gonna take this one again, and by just normally I only retouch with the Wacom tablet, but because this is the one I normally use inside, it's not really configured the way it should be for this one. So there we go. Just checking the hands, the arms. This one has to go. Why? Just give me a sec. I'm just gonna go to my Wacom settings because it bugs me. It doesn't do what I want it to do. So mapping. Let's change this one to monitor 1, and let's change this one to portion. Okay, let's see if it does the job better. Oh yeah. Okay, now we're in business. A program error. Why do you have a program error? Pascal, I've chosen this, it's not a brush, so it's the retouching brush. And the reason I have chosen it to be elliptical this way is because when it's round, it calculates everything around it. So the bigger the round will the brush will be, the more it has to calculate, and it has more possibility to create smudges instead of just making it smaller. The smaller it is, the more bleeding you will have in regards of transitions. So that's one of the reasons. Again, it's totally personal. I've been using it like ages now. This will be fun to clean up. So let's see, let's escape it. Now I'm gonna try to fix this part, which will be done with the cloning stamp. So what I'm gonna try to do is build it up slightly so that it doesn't look fake. There we go. So the trick is to sample from all over the place so that it is not really there we go. And when I zoom out, nobody can tell what's been happening. I just have to make it a little bit brighter, but that's something for the next step. So that's about it. Now, one thing we can do is like, yeah. Do we need frequency separation? Because I think the skin is already pretty nice. So I'm gonna leave it as is. What I'm gonna do now is do a dodging and a burning layer. So this one is burn, this one is dodge. Take a brush, zoom in a bit. Let's emphasize those highlights. Because I'm using a 10% brush, it's going way too quick. So I'm gonna change it to 1%. This way I have more control over the entire image. Let's do another dodge. Yeah, normally we've put up some music, but since then we have copyright issues, it's silent. So I'm just cleaning up some transitions, nothing too crazy. Cleaning up some transitions and then just emphasizing the image that's already there. Now with the darkening, no, we want this to be brighter. So I'm just gonna color it a bit to make it a little bit more realistic. There we go. Then back to the burning. So when we do eyes, for instance, let's turn it around again. Let's zoom in a bit. So when we do eyes, like if we paint dark here, paint dark on that side, and then some highlight on this piece, we create some sort of depth in the image. So the more I paint over it, the more it will be emphasized. So with using contrast, you can also introduce sharpness, which looks and sounds funny, but the more we do the dodging and burning, the more we are creating some sort of sharpening effect. There we go. Now, this is where it starts to get interesting, because now we're gonna use the colors to make this scene pretty interesting. So one of the things we can do is take a hue saturation, and then we're gonna take this little hand picker tool, click on a color, and then drag it the way we want to. Now, you see, it just changed everything. When I'm shooting outside with the greens, I don't like it that much. I always try to desaturate the greens, which is something I have done now. One of the good things about that is that it's taken the entire saturation down, because it has noted that the leaves, the ferns, are yellow. It takes the yellows, but if we remember it, yellow is one of the colors that is in the skin. So that's something to keep in mind, that when you do this, you also take down the saturation in the skin. Now for this image, it doesn't bug me that much, because I like the way it comes together now, but it's something to keep in mind. Now we can change the hue, for instance, to a color we like. Like I really like this color, and I can make it a little bit darker so that she even pops out a bit more. And that's just by using a hue saturation adjustment layer. So there's no fancy color toning going on. It's just a hue saturation, picking the hand picking tool, click on it, and then just drag left and right. So when you click on a color, let's show it again. If you click on any color, for instance this one, it says it's the red color, and then it saturates this part. So if I want to do something funky, like let's say for instance I want to make her a little bit more purplish, I can do it like that. And the difference is immer so slightly, but if we remember it correctly, green and magentas are each other's opposites, so those work really nice in pictures together. Um, so let's just lower the opacity a bit. There we go. And then let's start doing some serious color toning. So the yellows, what do we want to do with the yellows? Like we had before, we know that the yellows are in the entire image, so I'm not gonna bug too much with the yellows. I will be focusing on the shadows. Do we want the shadows to be bluish? And I would go with a yes. And we want to introduce a little bit more magenta. So we got the greens from the ferns combined with the magenta colored shadows. Now we also want the highlights to have some different vibe in them. We could do it with a selective color, take the whites, and then make the whites brighter or wider. So do you want more detail, less detail? I would do something like this to create some depth in the shot. But as you see here, blue and green, they don't like each other, so we have to change some things up. So I'm gonna reset this one to 0. But the cyan works really well. There we go. Now, what we could do is try a gradient map. If you have something like this and it looks funky, just remember that by hitting reverse, you change everything around. So I'm gonna put, I've just fallen out with the camera. not really an issue, so I'm just gonna disable the camera. Just give me a sec. I'm just gonna disable it, so up there we go. And then I'm gonna go back here. So when we have this, we can play around with the blend modes. For instance, if we do soft light. Now when we do soft light, I wouldn't reverse the shot, but it's just to give you an idea what different vibes can be used in an image. Like this is also interesting. It's more the day to night kind of vibe. It's something different. We can have it in there, but slightly. Now I prefer to have it not in there, but it's just a possibility. So I'm gonna remove this one again. And then also like we got color balance, which is split up into shadows, midtones, highlights. So let's say I want the shadows to be more blue and I want the highlights to be more yellow, green. Then this is one way to do it. Now keep in mind when you use color balance, one of the things that happens really quickly is that the how do we say it? You crush the highlights really quickly and you crush the blacks really quickly. So that's something to keep in mind. This one is really nice. So what we could do is just try to see if we put it onto color, what it does. Might work. It gives that kind of split toning effect in the image. And then what we could do is introduce some more contrast. But then the saturation gets way too high, so what I'm gonna do now is put a black and white layer on top of it and then lower down the opacity. Let's tint it a bit. So by just adding this kind of layer or black and white layer and diminishing the opacity, you control the saturation. Now, do we like it? I don't like it, so I'm gonna remove it, but you can also play around with the separate channels. Like you can say like I want the reds to be darker, I want the yellows to be brighter, and then that's something that might work. But for me in these kind of images, I don't want too much contrast in them. So like that, I like it. I'm gonna remove the color balance. So far, any questions about this one? While you can ask questions, what I'm gonna do is change the battery on my camera. So no questions. No questions from nobody. That's just not possible. So let's change the camera back on. And I'm back. So back to the image. No questions so far. Let me just check Facebook to see if we got questions over there. Doesn't look like it, but just gonna refresh the chat. There we go. So that it is clean again. So back to the image now. One final step I would do, like you can see it's a totally different image when we are talking about a certain vibe. Now what we could do is try with Liquify to make the dress a little bit more bombastic. So that's one of the things I'm gonna do, but for this I'm gonna merge all these together in a group and call it toning. There we go. These I'm just gonna call dB, and on this layer I'm gonna merge everything together and do a liquify on top of it, because this way when I in a later stage want to adjust the colors, I don't have to go back because I have the layer over here. So what I'm gonna do now is do a liquify filter, liquify, and I'm gonna try to make the dress a little bit, not too much. The art here is to take a brush that is really big so that when you drag things around it doesn't look that obvious that you have done it. There we go. Let's see before and after. And let's hit OK. There we go. So now when we still want to adjust the tonings, we don't have to redo the liquify. So let's see what it says. Yeah, still not sure if I like the pinkish tones in the skin, so let's see at what stage. Not that one, probably this one, yep. This one can be lowered a bit, quite a bit. There we go. And yeah, that's about it. What we could do is, for instance, if we want to go a little bit more creative, is add some sort of gradient on there. Let's say we want to do something like this or like that. Let's change it to radial, somewhere around there. Let's hit OK and change the blend mode to multiply or screen. But if we do screen, one of the things we have to do is make sure that we check reverse. That way we got some sort of weird haloing going on. It's more of a wash out kind of vibe in the image now. But again, that's totally personal. Like some people prefer it to be more washed out like this. I like to not be washed out like that. So the goal was to create something with an orange kind of vibe in it. So we change this color to orange. So this one, for instance, and this one we will be doing some more reddish like that. Yep, okay. Let's change it to radial, and then we can have it from the left side coming in and change the blend mode to something like soft light or something like screen if we want to give that kind of sun flare coming in. Now let's for the sake of argument do it like that. Now what we want to do is bleed it out a bit, but because we're still in a layer, that's not possible, so we have to rasterize the layer. So we're gonna click right on gradient fill and hit the rasterize layer. This way it merges the gradient together so that you have a separate layer which you can manipulate. Difficult word. So what we're gonna do now is hit Ctrl T, and by hitting this tool we can like drag it out any way we want. But I'm gonna restart because it's totally messed up now. go. Perfect. And even if you want to soften it out, you can still apply like a Gaussian blur on top of it. So go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and add, for instance, like 70 and more. So that's one thing you can do. I'm not gonna do it, but it's something to keep in mind. And then when we lower the fill from the layer, it's, yeah, you can play around with it. For instance, if we rotate it, flip horizontally and flip vertically, we stretch it out, then we got some sort of yeah, flare going on, some sort of washed out feeling, but less than the magenta purplish we had before. So do we like it? Don't we like it? Now when we do this, we can still add a curves adjustment layer on top of it and drag it a bit to the right, something like that. Again, colors is something personal, so that really depends on how you as a photographer or creative person like some different colors. But you can see that you have more creative um, possibilities when you do an image like that instead of an image shot in the studio. Now, do we have questions about this image? If we don't have any questions, I'm probably gonna round everything up now. Now, I hope you enjoyed this little live stream with the technical issues we had. I'm just gonna save this one out. Just keep in mind that, and I'm gonna lower the opacity a bit. Not from that one, but from this one. Just keep in mind that when we are doing these live retouching sessions, it's really nice to have images you send in. Even if you have sent in images before, it's nice to show you what's possible with your own image. We don't need credit for it. We just retouch them live and that's it. So we're gonna show you how I would retouch that image, how I feel that kind of image, and that's about it. And thanks, Carlo. So for the next session, which will, I'm not sure if I will be doing another one this week, I will be posting some more Instagram videos on my Instagram. I've did 5 or 6 so far from selfies took by models themselves and retouched them, explaining what I'm doing, and they will come online on my Instagram. So feel free to check that out over there. And if you got questions about anything, let me know below. Carlo, de acties staan hier. Maar ja, dat zijn acties die door de jaren heen verzameld zijn. Dus ja, van alles wat. Er zijn ook die... We also got like the extensions, all these things. They are more complex, like for instance Lumensia, which is a plugin to do some landscape, highlights, shadows kind of thing. I'm not gonna go too much into detail about that since that's a little bit more complex. But so yeah, what I was saying is, like, if you got images you would like to see retouched, don't hesitate to get in touch with me. I do them for free. Since everybody has to stay home, we need to do something, so feel free to send them to me. Also, as you've seen before, it's easy. You can do more creatively when you're doing an image that's shot outside with a certain background attached to it, instead of like, yeah, a normal studio shot. Like when I change back to this screen, for instance, this one, they are really nice shots and you can do a lot with it, but in regards of retouching, it's always the same. So it will be skin, touch and burn, frequency separation, coloring. So those are the normal steps I use when I'm retouching this. Carlo, dat zullen we even bekijken als je nog eens in de studio bent misschien, want dat is moeilijk om daar nu een antwoord op te geven, aangezien dat daar ook heel veel aangekochte acties bij zijn. Dus dat is een ander verhaal. Maar stuur maar een berichtje met welke je eventueel zou willen, want het zijn er een hoop. So that's it for now. If you want to like check out, let's see if I can get it over here. Where is it? Oh, I'm frozen again. Yep, I'm frozen. That's a little movie. Where is my mouse? My mouse. Hate it when it freezes and I don't see it. And I'm back. So, yeah, that's about it. I was gonna say, feel free to go and check out my website, but for some weird reason, I have no idea which reason, it won't show up. So let's reload that one because it keeps bugging me. There we go. So if we do it like that, feel free to head over to my website. Let's change it up again here. So feel free to head over to the website. For now, everything is closed, but in the future, more tutorials will come online, where I'll take you in English through the retouching. Also, we've got this preset pack out. So, voor jou ook, Carlo. So we got this preset pack out. Go check it out. I've used them in previous live streams. And yeah, if you like what you've seen, we've also got a YouTube channel which can be found by just Googling my name, or not Googling, YouTubing my name. This one is my channel. Feel free to subscribe. I'm live now, as you've all seen. And yeah, more updates will follow soon. And yeah, I'm also working on a Patreon or something like that. But yeah, that we will mention when it's all up and running. So that's about it. Let me change back to the full screen. So that's about it. Hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, I'll see you when I see you. And feel free to get in touch with me. Thanks for watching. And thank you. And enjoy this day. And don't forget, stay safe. Ciao, ciao, everybody.